The world saw Fatima Musa as an angel. At Horizon Academy, the most prestigious private school in Lagos, she was the perfect student. Her white hijab was always neatly pressed, her manners impeccable. She spoke softly, never raised her voice, and treated everyone with kindness. She never missed a prayer, attended religious gatherings with her father, and spent weekends volunteering at orphanages. As the daughter of Sheikh Musa, one of the most respected Islamic scholars in Nigeria, Fatima was expected to embody purity, wisdom, and modesty. And she did, at least in public. But behind closed doors, she was the mastermind of her school's biggest scandals. Fatima knew how to pull strings, control people, and create chaos without ever getting caught. From rigging student council elections to leaking teachers' secrets, she had dirt on almost everyone. She was the queen of manipulation. No one suspected her because who would believe the sheikh's daughter was capable of such things? That day she sat at her usual table in the cafeteria, surrounded by a few girls who worshipped her. Saad, the class gossip, was ranting about how her parents had refused to buy her a new iPhone. Amina, always eager to please, nodded along while peeling an orange for Fatima. Wallahi, it's not fair, Sade whined, flipping her braids. How can they expect me to survive with this outdated phone? Maybe you should stop posting every second of your life on Snapchat, Fatima said, her voice sweet but sharp. Then they wouldn't think you're ungrateful, Sade blinked. Unsure if she had just been insulted, Amina giggled nervously. Fatima smirked, taking a sip of her apple juice. That was how she operated. Subtle. Never outright cruel, but always in control. Her power lay in making people question themselves. Then she saw him. A new student walked into the cafeteria, Jeed Alabai. Tall, dark-skinned, with an effortless confidence, he moved through the room as if he didn't care who was watching. His uniform was crisp, his shoes polished. But what struck Fatima was the way he carried himself like someone who saw things others didn't. She expected him to lower his gaze when their eyes met, the way most boys did. Instead, he smirked. Fatima's fingers tightened around her juice box. "Who's that?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. Amina glanced at him. "Oh, that's Jide, new transfer student. I heard his parents died, so he's staying with his uncle now." Fatima frowned. "His uncle?" Sada leaned in, whispering. "His uncle is that journalist, Alabi Olayinka. You know, the one who's always exposing politicians and corrupt leaders." Fatima's stomach twisted slightly. She knew the name. Her father had warned her about that journalist before. Jeed took a seat at the far end of the cafeteria, alone. But he wasn't looking at his food. He was looking at her. And for the first time in a long time, Fatima felt something she hated: ease. Fatima sat in her usual seat at the back of the class, her fingers lazily flipping through her notebook. The teacher droned on about Nigerian history, but her mind was elsewhere. Jeed Alabai. She didn't like the way he had looked at her in the cafeteria, like he knew something she didn't. She needed to find out more about him. "Amina," she whispered, barely turning her head. Amina, who sat beside her, immediately perked up. "Yes? Find out everything you can about Jide. I want to know why he transferred here, what his uncle is like, and if he has any weaknesses." Amina nodded quickly. She never questioned Fatima's requests. She was too eager to stay in her good graces. Across the room, Jide sat with his hands folded, looking completely at ease. He was too calm for a new student, too confident. And then, just as if he could hear her thoughts, he turned and smiled at her. Fatima narrowed her eyes. This boy was going to be a problem. After class, she headed to her locker, only to find Jeed leaning against it. "Excuse me," she said, her voice still soft, still polite. Jeed didn't move. Instead, he tilted his head. "Fatima Musa," he said, as if tasting the words. "Daughter of Sheikh Musa, Horizon Academy's perfect princess." Fatima felt her muscles stiffen. Something about the way he said it felt wrong. She put on her usual warm smile. "You seem to know a lot about me," Jeed shrugged. "I do my research." Fatima kept smiling. "Then you must know I don't like people standing in my way." Jeed chuckled. Oh, I'm not in your way, Fatima. He leaned in slightly. I'm just watching you. Something in his voice sent a chill down her spine, and for the first time in her life, Fatima realized she might not be the most dangerous person in the room anymore. Fatima wasted no time. By lunchtime, Amina had already gathered some details about Jide. He was in another private school before, but he left after his parents died. Apparently there was an accident, but Amina hesitated. But what? Fatima pressed. There are rumors that it wasn't an accident. Fatima frowned. Go on. Amina lowered her voice. People say his parents were killed because of his uncle's journalism work. That they were murdered. Fatima's heart skipped a beat. Murdered? This changed everything. Jide wasn't just some transfer student. He had a reason for being here. And for the first time in her carefully controlled life, Fatima wondered if she had just met her match. Fatima didn't like feeling out of control. It made her uneasy. And unease was dangerous. By the time school ended, she had already decided on her next move: eliminate Jide before he became a problem. She sat in her father's car, staring out the tinted window as the driver pulled out of Horizon Academy's gates. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over Lagos. Her father's mansion was only a few minutes away, but in her mind she was still in school, plotting. Jide was too confident, too aware, and worst of all, too interested in her. She needed to bring him down before he could do the same to her. That night she scrolled through her private group chat, a secret forum where she exchanged gossip and leaked scandals with other powerful students. Fatima, new project. Find out if Jide Alibi has any skeletons in his closet. I want everything. The responses came in quickly. Sade. On it, I'll ask around. Amina, he's always alone, maybe he's hiding something. Musa, we can make something up if we can't find anything. Fatima smirked. That was exactly what she was thinking. The next day at school, she planted the first seed. She walked into the cafeteria, carefully choosing her words as she whispered to Amina, loud enough for the right ears to hear. I heard Jide was expelled from his last school, she said, taking a sip of her drink. Amina gasped, playing her part well. Expelled for what? Fatima leaned closer. They say he got into a violent fight, broke a boy's arm. His parents had to pay off the school to keep it quiet. Amina's eyes widened. Are you serious? Fatima just smiled, letting the story spread. By the end of the day, the whole school was whispering about Jide Alibi, the dangerous new boy. But the next morning, something unexpected happened. Jide was waiting for her by her locker. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable. You work fast, he said. Fatima blinked, feigning innocence. I don't know what you mean. Jide chuckled, shaking his head. Nice try, Fatima. But let me give you some advice. If you're going to spread a rumor, at least make sure it's believable. Fatima's breath hitched. He wasn't supposed to catch on this quickly. Then he leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. I know what you did last year. Her blood ran cold. Last year, Mr. Bayo. No one was supposed to know about that. Fatima forced herself to smile. You don't know anything. Jide's smirk deepened. We'll see. As he walked away, her fingers clenched into fists. For the first time in her life, she had met someone she couldn't control. And that terrified her. That night, Fatima lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. What did Jide know? Her mind drifted to last year when she had orchestrated the disappearance of Mr. Bayo, the history teacher who had gotten too close to the truth. He had caught her tampering with student records, changing grades for her allies and lowering scores for those who annoyed her. He had been furious, threatening to expose her to the school board, so Fatima had handled it. She had spread rumors that he was inappropriate with female students, planted fake messages, convinced a few scared girls to play along. By the time the school investigated, his reputation was ruined. Mr. Bayo had resigned and left Lagos. No one had seen him since. And now Jide was looking at her like he knew. Fatima sat up abruptly, grabbing her phone. She typed a quick message to Amina. Fatima, I need you to find out how much Jide really knows. Amina responded instantly. Amina, how? Fatima, get close to him. Pretend you like him. He won't see it coming. Amina hesitated before replying. Amina, are you sure? He doesn't seem like the type to fall for that. Fatima's jaw tightened. He will. The next day, Amina made her move. She approached Jide during break, flashing him her prettiest smile. Hey, Jade, she said. I was thinking, you're new here and I'd love to show you around. Jide glanced at her, unimpressed. Thanks, but I think I'll be fine. Amina giggled, tucking her braids behind her ear. Come on, don't be like that. I heard you're really smart. Maybe you could tutor me. Jide raised an eyebrow, then slowly he smirked. Fatima, watching from across the hallway, felt a wave of satisfaction. He was taking the bait. But then Jide's smirk turned into a full smile and he looked straight at Fatima. She stiffened. Jide knew. He was playing along, but he wasn't falling for it. Fatima clenched her fists. This wasn't over. She would find out what Jide knew about Mr. Bayo, and if he was a threat, she would eliminate him too. Fatima had been in control for as long as she could remember. She was the puppet master, the unseen force that made things happen at Horizon Academy. Teachers feared her. Students admired her. No one questioned her power. Until now. Jide Alabi had flipped the game board upside down, and for the first time in her life, Fatima wasn't sure of her next move. He knew something, but how much? By lunchtime, she had made up her mind. It was time to confront him. She found him in the library, alone at a corner table, flipping through a thick government textbook. He didn't look up when she sat across from him. I don't like games, she said. Jide smirked. That's a shame. You're really good at them. Fatima's fingers twitched, but she kept her face neutral. You said you know what I did last year. Jide closed his book and met her gaze. I do. Fatima leaned forward, lowering her voice. Then tell me, Jide, what exactly do you think I did? Jide studied her for a moment before reaching into his pocket. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and then played an audio recording. Her voice, filled the air. Mr. Bayo, I suggest you rethink your decision. You don't want to make an enemy out of me. Fatima's blood ran cold. Jide paused the recording, tucking his phone away. You recognize that, don't you? She did. It was a conversation she had with Mr. Bayo right before his downfall. She had threatened him, and someone, somehow, had recorded it. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Where did you get that? She demanded, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Jide tilted his head. Let's just say, I have my sources. Fatima exhaled slowly, controlling her expression. If you had proof, why haven't you used it yet? Jide leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Because I don't want to destroy you. That caught her off guard. Then what do you want? A slow, deliberate smile spread across Jide's face. I want you to help me. Fatima stared at him, her mind racing. Jide had evidence, a recording that could ruin her. Yet instead of turning her in, he wanted something from her. That meant he needed her. She leaned back in her chair, regaining her composure. Help you with what? Jide's smirk faded. His voice dropped to a serious tone. I need revenge. Fatima raised an eyebrow. Revenge against who? Jide exhaled sharply, tapping his fingers against the table. The man who killed my parents. Fatima blinked. Your parents died in an accident. Jide's jaw tightened. No, that's what they wanted people to believe. He leaned in. My uncle, the journalist, he found out the truth. My parents were murdered because my father had evidence against a corrupt senator. Someone powerful wanted them gone. Fatima stilled. A corrupt senator. She thought about her father's inner circle. His powerful connections in government. She had heard whispers before. Deals being made, favors being exchanged. Jide took her silence as an answer. You know who I'm talking about, don't you? Fatima didn't reply. Jide leaned even closer, his eyes locked onto hers. I don't just want the senator exposed. I want to ruin him, and I need your skills to do it. Fatima tapped her manicured nails against the table. And if I refuse? Jide smirked. Then I'll have no choice but to release that recording. Fatima forced a smile. You know, Jide, blackmailing me is a very dangerous thing to do. Jide's grin didn't fade. So is crossing me. For the first time in a long time, Fatima wasn't sure if she was the predator or the prey. And for the first time ever, she liked it. Fatima should have walked away. She should have reported Jide, played the victim, used her father's influence to make the evidence disappear. But there was something about Jide's confidence, his determination, that intrigued her. She had never met someone like him before. And deep down, she was curious. She leaned forward, smiling sweetly. All right, Jide. You want revenge? Let's talk. Jide's eyes flickered with amusement. That was easier than I thought. Fatima crossed her arms. Don't get comfortable. I haven't agreed to anything yet. Jide nodded. Fair enough. Fatima studied him carefully. What exactly do you want me to do? Jide exhaled. The senator who had my parents killed is still in power. My uncle has been gathering evidence, but we need something bigger, something so damaging that he can't escape. Fatima raised an eyebrow. And you think I can find that? Jide smirked. I know you can. Fatima tapped her chin. It won't be easy. The senator has protection. If my father is connected to him, this could get messy. Jide's expression darkened. I don't care about messy. Fatima studied him for a moment before finally saying, Fine, I'll help you. Jide raised an eyebrow. Just like that? Fatima smiled. Oh, don't get me wrong. I don't care about your revenge. She leaned in, voice smooth as silk. I just like a challenge. Jide chuckled. I think I'm going to enjoy working with you. Fatima smirked. Likewise? And just like that, the devil and the hunter made a deal. But one question lingered in the air. Who was really in control? Fatima didn't trust Jide. She didn't trust anyone, really. Trust was for the weak. But something about Jide intrigued her. He wasn't like the rest, the mindless students who worshipped her, the teachers who feared her, the school administration who danced to her father's influence. Jide was different. He had nothing to lose, which made him dangerous. But Fatima had everything to lose. And she wasn't about to let Jide be the reason she fell. The plan. The first thing they needed was evidence. Jide had told her that his uncle had a collection of files on the senator. Proof of money laundering, bribery, and even orchestrating assassinations. The problem? None of it was strong enough to bring the senator down. Fatima, however, knew where to look. Powerful men always left trails behind, no matter how careful they were. And if the senator was as reckless as she suspected, he would have a hidden weakness. We need something more than just paperwork, Fatima told Jide as they sat in a secluded corner of the school library. We need something undeniable, something that will force the government to act. I'd leaned back, arms crossed. And where do we find that? Fatima tapped her chin, thinking. Then she smiled. His bank records. Jide frowned. That's not exactly easy to get, Fatima smirked. For you? Maybe. For me? It's just another game. Jide studied her for a moment. You enjoy this, don't you? Fatima's smile didn't waver. Oh, Jide, you have no idea. Fatima had connections. People thought she only controlled a school, but her reach extended far beyond Horizon Academy. Over the years, she had built alliances with politicians' children, tech geniuses, even a few hackers. And today she was calling in a favor. She met with Kabir, a former student expelled last year. Brilliant with computers, morally questionable, and completely loyal to her. You want bank records? Kabir whistled, shaking his head. Fatima, you don't ask for small things, do you? Fatima smiled. Big problems require big solutions, Kabir sighed. You know I can do it, but breaking into a senator's accounts? That's risky. If I get caught. You won't, Fatima cut in smoothly. And I'll make it worth your while, Kabir raised an eyebrow. How much are we talking? Fatima smirked. Not money, she leaned in. I know where your missing laptop is. Kabir stiffened. Fatima chuckled. Yes, the one you lost mysteriously. I know who took it, and I know how to get it back. Kabir cursed under his breath. You really are the devil, Fatima winked. I prefer strategist Kabir sighed, rubbing his forehead. Fine, I'll get you the records, but it won't be easy. Fatima's smile widened. It never is. It took 3 days, but Kabir delivered. Fatima and Jeed sat in an abandoned classroom staring at the documents on Jeed's laptop. The senator's accounts were filthy. Millions of naira moved between offshore accounts, bribery payments, and undeclared properties. Jeed exhaled sharply. This is it. Fatima tapped her nails against the desk. Not yet. Jeed frowned. What do you mean? Fatima glanced at him. If we leak everything now, they'll cover it up. We need something bigger, something they can't ignore. Jaid's eyes darkened. Like what? Fatima smiled. Like a scandal. Fatima had always been good at traps. If they wanted to bring the senator down, they needed to catch him in the act, and she knew exactly how to do it. Using Kabir's skills, they hacked into the senator's private messages. What they found was even better than expected. He was involved in a secret deal, one that could ruin him forever. A property scam. Millions of dollars involved. And the meeting was happening this weekend. Fatima's heart raced. This is it, she whispered. We need to record it. Jeed hesitated. That's dangerous, Fatima smirked. You're not scared, are you? Jeed exhaled, shaking his head. No, but you should be. Fatima's smile faded slightly. For the first time she wondered, well, was she in over her head? But it was too late to turn back now. Fatima had orchestrated many schemes before, blackmailing teachers, planting rumours, even forging documents. But this was the most dangerous game she had ever played. She and Jeed sat in the dimly lit classroom, staring at the screen displaying the senator's private messages. The conversation was clear. The senator was about to meet with foreign investors to finalize a multi-million-dollar property scam. Jeed clenched his fists. If we can record this deal, it'll be enough to bury him. Fatima's mind worked fast. We need someone inside. Jeed shook his head. No one can get close enough. His security is too tight. Fatima's lips curled into a smirk. Then we make him come to us? Jeed frowned. How? Fatima leaned forward, eyes gleaming. We give him an offer he can't refuse. Fatima had one weakness. She loved control. And control required risk. She crafted a message using an anonymous account, posing as a foreign businessman, looking to invest millions of dollars into Lagos properties. The perfect bait. Within hours, the senator's assistant responded, asking to set up a meeting. Jaid paced the classroom. Fatima, this is insane. If he finds out, he won't, she cut in smoothly. Not if we do this right. Jeed hesitated. We're playing with powerful people, Fatima smiled. That's the best kind of game. Jaid exhaled. Fine, but if this goes wrong, it won't. Fatima had never lost a game before. She didn't plan on starting now. The meeting was set for Saturday night at an exclusive private club in Victoria Island. Fatima and Jeed had arranged everything: a hidden camera, a fake investment pitch, and an escape plan. The senator arrived exactly on time, dressed in a crisp suit, his assistant by his side. Fatima and Jeed watched from a discreet booth as the man sat down with their fake investor, a hired actor with a smooth British accent. The conversation began, and every word was being recorded. Jeed's hands were clenched under the table. This is it. Fatima barely breathed. Everything was going perfectly. Until Fatima. Her blood ran cold. She turned slowly and found herself staring into her father's eyes, Sheikh Musa, standing in the middle of the club, watching her. Fatima's heart nearly stopped. Her father had found her. Fatima had been prepared for everything except this. Sheikh Musa's sharp gaze swept over the club, narrowing as he took in the scene. Jeed tensed beside her. What do we do? Fatima swallowed, forcing a smile. We stay calm. Her father's voice was calm but dangerous. What are you doing here, Fatima? She had seconds to come up with a lie. She glanced at Jaid. We're working on a school project. Her father's eyes flickered to Jaid. At a private club. Fatima exhaled. It's for our government studies class. We're researching corruption. Sheikh Musa stared at her, unreadable. Then, slowly, he turned to the senator's table. Fatima held her breath. If he put the pieces together, then... Suddenly, the senator stood up, shaking hands with their fake investor. The deal had been made. The evidence was secured. Fatima felt a rush of relief until her father's next words made her blood turn to ice. "We need to talk. Now." Fatima followed her father outside, her heart hammering. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "What game are you playing, Fatima?" She forced a laugh. "Baba, it's just school research." He cut her off. "Don't lie to me." Fatima's breath caught. Sheikh Musa's voice was quiet but firm. "Stay out of things that don't concern you." Her stomach twisted. He knew. Not everything, but enough. And then, in a voice softer than before, he said, "You don't want to end up like Mr. Bayo, do you?" Fatima's world stopped. He knew about Bayo. Her perfect mask nearly cracked, but she forced herself to remain still. Calm. She looked her father in the eye. "I don't know what you're talking about." Sheikh Musa sighed. "Then let me say it clearly." He stepped closer. "Drop this, or you'll regret it." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Fatima standing in the dark. For the first time she felt fear. Real, bone-deep fear. Her father wasn't just connected to the senator. He was part of everything. Fatima had two choices, walk away or burn everything down. She met Jeed the next morning, her voice steady. "We're releasing the evidence." Jeed frowned. "What about your father?" Fatima exhaled. "I'll deal with him." Jeed hesitated. "This could ruin you." Fatima's smile was sharp. "Or it could set me free." That night, the video was leaked to an anonymous news website. Within hours, the senator's scandal was everywhere. Social media exploded. News stations picked up the story. Fatima watched as the empire of power began to crumble. But then, the police arrived at her house. And they weren't there for the senator. They were there for her. Sheikh Musa stood beside the officers, his face cold. "This is for your own good, Fatima," he said. Fatima's pulse pounded. "You're handing me over?" Her father's voice was calm. "You've gone too far." Her world tilted. He was choosing his reputation over her. She'd stepped forward. "She didn't do anything." One of the officers turned to him. "Then explain Mr. Bayo." Fatima's stomach dropped. They knew. The evidence she thought was buried had been dug up. She had spent years controlling everything. But now she had lost. Or had she? Fatima took a deep breath. "I want a lawyer." Yeed met her gaze, and for the first time, she smiled, because the game wasn't over. Not yet. The news was everywhere. The senator was arrested. But so was Fatima Musa. She sat in the police station waiting, unbothered, because she knew something no one else did. Her father had betrayed her. But she had one last move left. She glanced at the officers and whispered, "I have something bigger than the senator." They paused. Fatima smiled. "Let's talk about my father. The devil always has one last trick. And Fatima Musa." She wasn't done playing. 6 months later, Lagos was different now. The senator had fallen. His name erased from politics. His empire crumbled. His closest allies had turned against him, trading secrets for lesser punishments. But no one had fallen harder than Sheikh Musa. Fatima had made sure of it. She sat in her lawyer's office, dressed in a perfectly ironed white hijab, her face calm, her hands folded in her lap. The entire country had watched her trial, waiting to see if the Sheikh's daughter would be found guilty. She hadn't been. She had cut a deal. The evidence she had provided on her father had been too big to ignore. Financial fraud, illegal land deals, even connections to assassinations. The police had no choice but to take him down. In return, Fatima walked free. Her father had underestimated her. He thought he could sacrifice her to save himself. He had forgotten who he had raised. She was his perfect little devil, after all. Jeed was waiting for her outside the courthouse, leaning against his car. He looked at her with caution, respect, and something else, something close to admiration. So, he said, you really did it. Fatima smirked. I told you I would. Jeed exhaled, shaking his head. Your own father, Fatima. Fatima's smile didn't waver. He tried to destroy me first. Jeed studied her. And now? Fatima glanced up at the sky. The sun was shining bright and warm. She was free now. No more games, she said, her voice softer than usual. Jeed raised an eyebrow. You? No more games? Fatima turned to him, her dark eyes glinting. Okay, she admitted, maybe, just one or two. Jeed chuckled. I don't know if I should be impressed or terrified. Fatima smirked. Probably both. They stood there in silence for a moment before Jeed sighed. So what's next for you? Fatima took a deep breath. I think I need a break from being the villain. Jeed tilted his head. You were never just the villain, Fatima. You were the whole story. She smiled, a real smile this time. Maybe for once she didn't have to be the one pulling the strings. Maybe for once she could just be herself, whoever that was. The end for now.